An ex-prisoner walks his dogs every morning, until people discovered the truth. The courthouse doors slammed shut behind Marcus Webb with a finality that still echoed in his nightmares 3 years later. Now at 42, he walked the quiet streets of Riverside every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, 5 pristine white poodles trotting elegantly beside him like a small parade of clouds. Neighbors whispered from behind their curtains. Some smiled nervously. Others recorded videos that spread across neighborhood forums with captions like "The Poodle Man" and "Weird Morning Ritual Alert." But what made everyone truly uncomfortable wasn't just the dogs. It was the tattoos peeking from his collar, the prison-hard look in his eyes, and the way he never, ever made eye contact. "Morning, Mr. Webb," called out Patricia Morris from her porch, coffee mug trembling slightly in her hands. Marcus nodded once, silent as always, and continued walking. The poodles moved in perfect synchronization, never pulling at their leashes, never barking. It was unsettling how controlled everything about him seemed. What nobody knew was that Marcus had spent the last 3 years rebuilding something that prosecutor Daniel Whitmore had destroyed with a single lie. A lie that cost Marcus his reputation, his veterinary license, and 3 years of his life in a maximum security prison for a crime he didn't commit. Every morning, as he walked those poodles past the courthouse where Whitmore still worked, Marcus's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Because these weren't just any dogs. They were evidence. And Daniel Whitmore, the golden boy prosecutor who'd built his career on Marcus's false conviction, had no idea that the man he'd framed was about to dismantle everything he held dear. 3 years ago, someone had poisoned a wealthy judge's champion show dog. Whitmore needed a conviction to prove his worth to the DA's office. Marcus, a black veterinarian who treated the dog days before its death, became the perfect scapegoat. Falsified evidence, coerced witnesses, and a jury that saw what they wanted to see did the rest. But Whitmore made one fatal mistake. He underestimated how much a man with nothing left to lose could accomplish with patience, intelligence, and 5 very special poodles. As Marcus turned the corner near the park, one of the dogs, a particularly elegant female named Justice, glanced back toward the courthouse with those knowing eyes. If anyone had been paying attention, they might have noticed the small camera embedded in her collar, recording everything. If you're enjoying this story of patience and calculated justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what Marcus is about to reveal will leave everyone speechless. Prison had taught Marcus many things, but patience was the most valuable lesson. Behind those concrete walls, he'd had nothing but time to replay every moment of his trial, every smug expression on Daniel Whitmore's face as he presented evidence that Marcus had never seen before. The prosecutor's closing argument still burned in his memory. This man, entrusted with the care of innocent animals, betrayed that trust for money. Judge Harrison's champion poodle died in agony because Marcus Webb chose greed over compassion. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours. What they didn't know was that Marcus had spent those 3 years doing more than just surviving. He befriended a former investigator serving time for unrelated charges, learned everything about evidence collection, and studied legal precedents until his eyes burned. Most importantly, he discovered something that made his blood run cold. Judge Harrison's dog hadn't been the first. 2 years before Marcus's conviction, another veterinarian, Dr. Sarah Chun, had been accused of similar negligence involving one of Whitmore's own clients. She'd lost her license but avoided prison through a plea deal. 6 months before that, a kennel owner named James Rodriguez faced identical charges. The pattern was too precise to be coincidence. Whitmore had built his reputation on animal cruelty cases, always with the same narrative: trusted caregiver betrays innocent creatures. The media loved it. Voters loved it. And Whitmore rode that wave straight to the top of the DA's office, where he now sat preparing for a congressional run. But Marcus wasn't the broken veterinarian Whitmore had left behind. The poodles walking beside him each morning weren't just pets. They were Judge Harrison's breeding stock, purchased through a third party after the judge's death from a heart attack. The same judge who'd presided over Marcus's trial, whose dog's death had started this nightmare. Every morning, Marcus walked past Whitmore's favorite coffee shop, the courthouse, and the park where the prosecutor jogged at lunch. Every morning, those poodles recorded everything: conversations, meetings, the casual arrogance of a man who believed himself untouchable. Yesterday, Justice's collar camera had captured something extraordinary: Whitmore meeting with a veterinary supply company representative, the same company that had provided the evidence in Marcus's case. The conversation had been brief, but one phrase had been crystal clear: "We'll handle the next one the same way we handled Webb." There would be another victim. Another innocent professional destroyed to feed Whitmore's ambition. Marcus's hands tightened on the leashes as he watched Whitmore emerge from his Mercedes, designer suit gleaming in the morning sun. The prosecutor's phone rang, and his voice carried across the street. Yes, the Webb case secured my position. That's the blueprint going forward. The arrogance was breathtaking. Whitmore didn't just believe he'd gotten away with it, he was proud of the system he'd created. But what Whitmore couldn't see from his air-conditioned car was the woman standing in the shadows near Marcus. Dr. Chun, the veterinarian whose life Whitmore had ruined 2 years before Marcus. She'd lost everything: her practice, her savings, her marriage. She'd found Marcus 3 months ago through a support group for wrongly accused professionals. She wasn't alone either. James Rodriguez stood on the opposite corner, his phone recording Whitmore's every movement. They weren't just victims anymore. They were witnesses. And they were building a case that would make Whitmore's careful construction crumble like sand. The small apartment above the pet grooming salon smelled of lavender shampoo and determination. Marcus sat at a folding table covered with photographs, legal documents, and 3 laptops running facial recognition software. Dr. Chen and James Rodriguez flanked him, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of screens. That's him, Chen said, pointing to a grainy image. Kevin Marsh, the veterinary supply rep. He testified against me too, claimed I'd ordered excessive amounts of sedatives. Marcus zoomed in on the timestamp. Same man who testified in my trial. Same script, different defendant. He pulled up another file. And look at this, he's on Whitmore's campaign donor list. $5,000 last month alone. Rodriguez leaned back, his jaw tight. So Whitmore's been running this scam for years. Find a professional with access to animals, plant evidence through Marsh's company, then prosecute them for maximum publicity. And we're going to prove it, Marcus said quietly. He reached down to scratch Justice behind the ears. The poodle wore a new collar today, slightly thicker than the others, containing an upgraded camera system that a sympathetic tech company had donated after hearing his story. The key ally had arrived 3 weeks ago, attorney Rebecca Morrison, a civil rights lawyer who'd spent 15 years fighting wrongful convictions. She'd found Marcus through the Innocence Project and immediately recognized the pattern in his case. The problem isn't just proving you're innocent, she'd explained during their first meeting. It's proving systematic corruption. Whitmore's protected by prosecutorial immunity for official acts. But conspiracy to frame multiple people? That's criminal. Now, Rebecca's voice crackled through the laptop speaker from her office downtown. The footage you've gathered is compelling, but we need something that directly connects Whitmore to falsified evidence. Something that shows intent. Marcus pulled up the morning's recordings. Watch this. The video showed Whitmore outside the courthouse, phone pressed to his ear. His voice came through clearly, "Find me another case." Something emotional, dead pet, devastated owner. The public eats it up every time. And makes sure the defendant fits the profile. We need someone who looks guilty. Rebecca's sharp intake of breath was audible. That's consciousness of guilt. That's conspiracy. When did you record this? This morning. 7:43 a.m. Marcus fast-forwarded to another clip. And here's the part that changes everything. In the footage, Whitmore met with Marsh behind a coffee shop. The audio was crystal clear. The next target is Dr. Emily Foster. Black, female, immigrant. Perfect optics. Have your company deliver the usual supplies to her clinic, then we'll find the evidence during the search. Rodriguez slammed his fist on the table. He's planning another frame job right now. Not if we warn her first, Marcus said, already typing an email to Dr. Foster's clinic. And not if we document every step of his plan before he executes it. Chen's phone buzzed. Her face went pale. It started. Dr. Foster just called me. Animal control showed up at her clinic this morning with a warrant. They found expired sedatives she swears she never ordered. Marcus's hands moved swiftly across the keyboard, pulling up shipping records he'd obtained through Rebecca's legal channels. Marsh's company delivered those supplies yesterday. See the signature? It's not Foster's. The handwriting doesn't match her intake logs. We have him, Rebecca said, her voice sharp with excitement. Marcus, tomorrow morning, walk those dogs past his office again. Let him see you. Let him think you're just another broken ex-con going through the motions. Marcus smiled, cold and calculated. Because he has no idea what's coming. Outside the window, the city lights flickered like distant stars. Whitmore was preparing his next prosecution, writing the press release that would destroy another innocent person's life. He'd send the usual flowers to the grieving pet owner, hold the usual press conference, deliver the usual righteous speech about justice. But this time, justice wasn't on his side. This time, the evidence wasn't fabricated. And this time, the man he destroyed 3 years ago was about to return the favor, with compound interest. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. Daniel Whitmore stood before a wall of cameras, his expression perfectly calibrated between righteous anger and compassionate concern. Dr. Emily Foster sat in the defendant's chair, her hands trembling, her career about to be destroyed. Today we charge Dr. Foster with criminal negligence resulting in the death of Mrs. Patterson's beloved therapy dog, Whitmore began, his voice carrying the weight of practiced sincerity. This pattern of veterinary malpractice must. The courthouse doors burst open. Marcus Webb walked in, 5 white poodles at his side, their leashes held steady in his scarred hands. Behind him came Dr. Chun, James Rodriguez, and attorney Rebecca Morrison carrying 3 banker's boxes filled with evidence. Whitmore's face went white. This is a closed proceeding. Security. Actually, Rebecca's voice cut through the room like a blade. This is a public press conference about a public charge. And we have evidence the public needs to see. She opened her laptop, projecting onto the screen behind Whitmore. The footage played, his conversation with Kevin Marsh, crystal clear audio discussing their usual arrangement. The planning of Foster's frame-up. The admission about Marcus's case being the blueprint. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras swiveled from Whitmore to the screen and back. That's out of context, Whitmore stammered, but his voice cracked. The confidence that had carried him through dozens of prosecutions evaporated like morning fog. Then let's add context, Marcus said, his voice steady and cold. He nodded to Chun, who pulled out a thick binder. Exhibit A, shipping records from Marsh's company showing unauthorized deliveries to my clinic, Dr. Chen's practice, Rodriguez's kennel, and yesterday to Dr. Foster's office. All deliveries made within 48 hours of your investigation's beginning. Exhibit B, financial records showing payments from Marsh's company to your campaign fund totaling $47,000 over 3 years. Exhibit C, text messages between you and Marsh discussing targets and optics for cases. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow. Whitmore's face shifted from pale to red, sweat beading on his forehead. You can't prove. We can prove everything, Rebecca interrupted. She held up her phone. And in 5 minutes, this evidence will be filed with the State Bar, the Attorney General, and the FBI. Your prosecutorial immunity doesn't cover conspiracy to commit fraud and deprivation of civil rights under color of law. The poodles sat in perfect formation around Marcus, their cameras still recording every moment of Whitmore's collapse. Justice, the lead dog, tilted her head as if watching justice of another kind finally arrive. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Whitmore, how many innocent people have you framed?" Another, "Did you know Marcus Webb was innocent when you prosecuted him?" Whitmore's lawyer grabbed his arm, whispering urgently, but Whitmore jerked away. 3 years of arrogance, of believing himself untouchable, came crashing down in a single moment of panic. "I was doing my job," he shouted. "These people were suspicious." Suspicious of what? Marcus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. Being black? Running small businesses? Having access to wealthy clients you wanted to impress? The room fell silent. "You didn't just destroy my career, Daniel. You stole 3 years of my life. You made my daughter believe her father was a criminal. You took everything from me because it advanced your ambition." Marcus's hands tightened on the leashes. "But unlike you, I didn't fabricate evidence. I didn't lie. I just documented the truth." Whitmore's phone buzzed repeatedly. Text messages flooded in, colleagues distancing themselves, donors demanding refunds, party officials requesting his immediate resignation from the congressional race. "This is over," Rebecca said quietly. "State police are waiting outside to take your statement. I'd suggest you cooperate fully, though I doubt it'll help much." As officers entered the room, Marcus watched Whitmore's carefully constructed world crumble. The man who'd sent him to prison now faced the same system he'd corrupted, but this time, the evidence was real. Dr. Foster stood, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered to Marcus. He nodded. "Nobody deserves what he did to us." Outside, as cameras filmed Whitmore being led away in handcuffs, Marcus knelt beside his poodles. Justice nuzzled his hand, and for the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt something close to peace. 18 months later, Marcus stood in front of a renovated brownstone on the edge of Riverside, a freshly painted sign reading Second Chance Veterinary Clinic and Legal Advocacy Center gleaming in the afternoon sun. The 5 poodles lounged peacefully in the yard, their white coats brilliant against the green grass. Daniel Whitmore's trial had lasted 6 weeks. The evidence Marcus, Chun, and Rodriguez had gathered proved overwhelming. Conspiracy to commit fraud, deprivation of civil rights, falsification of evidence, witness tampering. The charges had piled up like dominoes. Whitmore received 12 years in federal prison, the same facility where Marcus had served his sentence. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Kevin Marsh, the veterinary supply representative, had turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony exposed a network of corruption that stretched across 3 counties and implicated 2 other prosecutors. The scandal had dominated headlines for months, forcing resignations and triggering a statewide review of animal cruelty convictions. Marcus's conviction was vacated within 3 months of Whitmore's arrest. The state offered him $50,000 per year of wrongful imprisonment, $150,000 total. It wasn't enough to replace what he'd lost, but combined with the settlement from the civil suit against the county, it gave him something more valuable than money, a fresh start. Dr. Emily Foster had become his business partner. Together, they'd created a dual-purpose facility, one side providing affordable veterinary care, the other offering free legal consultations for professionals facing wrongful accusations. Dr. Chun ran the legal advocacy program, her experience with Whitmore's corruption making her the perfect advocate for others. James Rodriguez managed the rescue program, housing animals seized as evidence in abuse cases until their owner's innocence or guilt could be properly determined. No more rushing to judgment. No more destroyed lives based on fabricated evidence. The morning walks continued, but now Marcus smiled and greeted neighbors by name. Patricia Morris from across the street brought fresh muffins every Wednesday. The children who once crossed the street to avoid him now stopped to pet the poodles and ask about becoming veterinarians. One crisp autumn morning, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. A young prosecutor from the DA's office, barely 30, stood nervously in his clinic's waiting room. "Mr. Webb, I'm handling a case that doesn't feel right," she said quietly. "The evidence seems too convenient, the timeline too perfect. I've read about what happened to you, and I think someone in my office might be trying the same playbook." Marcus listened as she detailed the case, another small business owner, another convenient narrative, another career about to be destroyed. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "You did the right thing coming here," he said. "Let's look at the evidence together." That afternoon, as Justice rested her head on his knee while he reviewed case files, Marcus realized something profound. Whitmore had tried to destroy him, but had instead created something far more powerful than a simple victim. He'd created a guardian, someone who understood the system's flaws intimately enough to fix them. The best revenge wasn't just proving his innocence. It was ensuring that no one else would suffer what he'd endured. 6 months later, the young prosecutor's case fell apart when Marcus's team uncovered falsified shipping records, the same pattern Whitmore had used. Another innocent person walked free. Another corrupt official faced consequences. Every exoneration felt like a small victory, not just for the wrongly accused, but for a justice system that desperately needed people willing to fight for what was right rather than what was convenient. Marcus Webb had spent 3 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Daniel Whitmore had spent 12 years building a career on lies. In the end, truth didn't just set Marcus free, it gave him purpose, community, and the satisfaction of knowing that intelligence and patience would always triumph over arrogance and corruption. The poodles that once served as secret cameras now simply served as reminders. Justice doesn't always arrive on time, but when it does, it's worth the wait. If this story of resilience and intelligent justice moved you, subscribe to the channel for more true stories that prove the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy, it's building something they could never imagine while they watch from behind bars.